The final stand, the air split open with light as the great ship above charged its core, a roaring beam of red energy swirling in the clouds like a storm about to swallow the earth. Ethan stood in the valley's center, every inch of his body trembling, but not from fear, from power. His eyes glowed faintly now, mirroring the blue shimmer that surrounded Lyra beside him. The wind lashed through the grass, lightning streaked across the sky, and the ground itself seemed to pulse like a living heartbeat. The masked leader raised his arm, shouting over the storm, "Surrender the code, or your world will burn with her memory." Ethan looked down at Lyra, who stood clutching her cracked pendant, her face pale but determined. "Lyra," he said quietly, "no matter what happens. You stay behind me," she shook her head. "We fight together. The bond choose both." Her words weren't just courage, they were truth, echoing deep inside him like an ancient vow being spoken again after lifetimes. The enemy soldiers spread out in a circle, their armor glowing as weapons charged with energy. The air crackled with heat, each movement humming like electricity through water. Ethan felt it all. The fear, the anger, the pull of something inside him that wasn't fully human anymore. He closed his eyes and whispered, "All right then." The moment he exhaled, the ground beneath him flared blue, and the same symbols Lyra once summoned appeared again, circling them in bright light. The first shot came from the left, a beam of pure plasma tearing through the air. Ethan raised his hand instinctively, and the beam curved away, crashing harmlessly into the trees. He didn't understand the energy, he remembered it, like recalling a muscle that had always known how to move. Lyra lifted her hand too, and her pendant floated up, its cracked crystal glowing brighter with every breath she took. Together, their light grew so strong it drowned out the red haze of the enemy ship. The masked leader stepped forward, furious. "You think you can defy the Council's order? You were created to serve, not to rule." Ethan's voice cut through the storm, steady and human. "I wasn't created. I was reborn. And this time I choose." The leader's mask cracked slightly, and beneath it, faintly human eyes burned with rage. "Then you will die like the last protector," he growled, and leapt forward, striking with a blade made of pure light. Ethan met the blow with his bare hands, energy sparking between them like thunder colliding with the sea. The shockwave tore through the valley, sending soldiers flying and splitting rocks in half. Lyra fell to her knees but pressed her hands to the ground, sending waves of blue light into the soil. Roots and vines burst upward, glowing with her power, wrapping around the enemy soldiers, pulling them down like the earth itself fought for her. Ethan and the leader clashed again, each strike a storm in itself. The leader shouted, "You can't win! The code is bound to destroy everything you love." Ethan gritted his teeth, blocking another strike. "Then I'll rewrite it." He reached forward and grabbed the leader's arm, his hand glowing white-hot. Energy flooded through him, images, voices, memories not his own, thousands of years of war, betrayal and broken promises. He saw Lyra's mother dying in that final light, sending her daughter away with one last message: "Find the protector." "End the war," Ethan roared and released the power, a blinding wave of blue and gold bursting outward. The leader screamed as his armor shattered and his body dissolved into light. The soldiers froze, their weapons falling silent, the ship above stuttering as its engines flickered and dimmed. The red storm faded from the clouds, leaving only rain, gentle, real rain falling softly over the valley. Lyra ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his waist, tears glowing like tiny stars. "You remember now," she whispered. "You finish what Mother start." Ethan knelt, looking into her luminous eyes. "No, we did." He smiled faintly, exhausted but alive. As the last of the enemy light faded into the clouds, far above them the massive ship broke apart silently, scattering into stardust that shimmered across the dawn. The sky turned gold, the air calm again, and for the first time since this began, Earth was quiet. Ethan stood, helping Lyra to her feet. "It's over," he said softly. Lyra looked up, the faintest smile forming on her lips. "No." It began again, and as the sunrise touched the horizon, Ethan realized she was right. This wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of something greater, a bridge between two worlds that destiny itself could not destroy. The sky opens, the morning air was calm again, heavy with the smell of rain and smoke. Ethan stood in the quiet valley, his clothes torn, his hands still faintly glowing with the last traces of energy. Around him, the forest looked alive once more, the trees whispering softly in the breeze. the river glimmering under the first light of dawn. Lyra stood beside him, clutching her cracked pendant, her silver hair tangled and wet, but her face peaceful for the first time since he'd met her. The ship that once threatened the earth was gone, scattered into the clouds like dust, and yet the sky above was far from ordinary. It shimmered, layered with faint lines of gold and blue, forming patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. Lyra looked up, eyes wide. "It's not storm," she whispered. "It's opening," Ethan frowned. "Opening to what?" She smiled faintly. "Home," before he could reply. A low musical hum filled the air. It came from everywhere at once, the trees, the air, even the ground beneath their feet. A beam of light descended slowly from the sky, pure white, swirling like a living thread of energy. Inside that light, a shape began to form, a woman's silhouette, tall and graceful, her face hidden by radiance. Lyra gasped softly, her voice breaking. "Mother?" The figure stepped closer, her glow softening into the form of the same queen Ethan had seen in his visions. Her eyes held the depth of stars, ancient and kind. She spoke not with her mouth but through the air itself, her voice echoing in both their minds. "My child and my protector," she said, her tone filled with warmth. "You have done what even I could not. You ended the war without fire." Lyra ran forward, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. "I thought you gone forever." The queen knelt, touching Lyra's face gently. "Gone from sight, but never from soul." Then her gaze shifted to Ethan, her expression both proud and sorrowful. "You kept your promise across lifetimes," she said. "Even when memory failed, your heart remembered." Ethan didn't know what to say, his throat tightening. "I just did what felt right," the queen smiled faintly. "And that is why humanity still has hope." The light around them began to expand, forming a wide circular portal high above the trees. Beyond it lay a sky of silver oceans and floating cities, the lost world of Elindra. Lyra stared in awe, her pendant glowing again, whole now, as if healed by her mother's presence. The queen turned to her. "It is time to return, my child. Your people need you." Lyra looked back at Ethan, her small hands trembling. "Can he come?" The queen's expression softened. "He cannot live there as you do, but his path is not over." Lyra stepped closer to Ethan, her eyes shimmering. "You promise remember me?" Ethan knelt beside her, smiling through the ache in his chest. "I couldn't forget you if I tried." She laughed softly, the sound pure and bright. "Then one day, I find you again." She pressed her pendant into his palm. It pulsed once, warm and alive. "For when you need me," she said. "Or when stars fall again." The queen extended her hand and Lyra stepped into the beam of light. The ground shimmered, the air rippled, and in that moment, the sky above burst open completely. A breathtaking spiral of color and light that stretched across the horizon. It wasn't a storm nor just a portal. It was like the universe itself taking a deep breath. Ethan shielded his eyes as Lyra looked back one last time, whispering, "Goodbye, protector," and then she was gone. The beam faded, the hum died, and the valley fell silent again. Only the pendant's faint glow remained in his hand. Beating softly like a second heart, Ethan stood there for a long time, watching the last traces of light dissolve into the dawn sky. He felt the wind shift gently across his face, carrying a warmth that wasn't from this world. He smiled faintly and whispered, "Goodbye, Lyra." Then he turned toward the rising sun, walking through the mist toward home. Behind him, the sky still shimmered faintly, as if watching over him, and somewhere far beyond Earth, in the golden skies of Elindra, a young girl looked up from her new world and whispered back, "Goodbye, protector." The chase begins. The wind outside the cave howled like a living thing, shaking the trees as the alien ship vanished beyond the clouds. Ethan carried Lyra in his arms, her small body weak and trembling, her pendant now dim and cracked. He could still smell the burned air from the energy blast she released moments ago. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was the kind that hides danger, the kind before everything breaks again. He laid her down on a soft patch of moss, brushing the dirt from her hair. Her eyes fluttered open, faintly glowing in the dark. "They gone," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "But not forever." Ethan frowned, glancing at the sky where the ship had disappeared. "You mean they'll come back?" Lyra nodded slowly. "More stronger. They call others." Ethan clenched his jaw, his heart pounding. "Then we'll keep moving. We'll stay ahead of them." But deep down, he knew running wouldn't be enough anymore. These weren't just hunters. They were soldiers of a world that wanted her erased. And somehow he was part of it now. The forest stretched endlessly before them, shadows twisting between the trees. Ethan lifted Lyra into his arms again and started walking toward the valley. The fog was thick, muffling every sound, until suddenly, he heard a sharp crack behind them. He turned quickly, scanning the darkness. At first, nothing moved. Then a faint light blinked in the distance, blue. Rhythmic like a pulse drones, Lyra whispered. Fear returning to her voice, Ethan tightened his grip on her and began running again, branches snapping under his boots. The forest came alive with sound, metallic wings slicing through the air. A low hum of engines echoing from above. Blue beams swept across the ground, scanning, searching. Down! Ethan shouted, throwing himself and Lyra behind a fallen log just as a beam passed over their heads. The wood hissed where it touched the light, sizzling like fire. Ethan's heart raced. "Can you stop them?" he asked her in a whisper. Lyra shook her head weakly. "Pendant. Broken. I know power now." Ethan looked around desperately, his mind racing for ideas. The drones were closing in fast, the lights getting brighter and louder. Then his eyes caught something, a metal tower ahead. Half collapsed but still standing, part of an old power station.
"Hold on," he said, carrying her toward it.
They reached the base and he spotted an old control box still intact, wires hanging out like veins. He set Lyra down gently and began pulling the wires, trying to remember the few electrical tricks his father had taught him years ago. "If I can reroute this, maybe I can overload the system," he muttered. Lyra watched weakly. "What'd it do?" "Make one big light show," he said, forcing a grin. "Maybe enough to fry their scanners." The hum of the drones grew louder, closer, just above them now. Ethan twisted the final wire, sparks flying. "Now!" he shouted, slamming the lever down. A massive surge of blue lightning shot upward, racing through the tower and exploding into the sky. The air filled with crackling energy, and the drones suddenly jerked and spiraled out of control, crashing into the forest one by one. The light faded, leaving the smell of ozone in the air. Ethan fell to his knees, exhausted. His hands burned but trembling with adrenaline. Lyra crawled over to him, her small fingers brushing his arm. "You save. Again," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. Ethan gave a tired smile. "Guess I'm getting used to it." But before he could catch his breath, the ground trembled again from the distance. The sky split open with light, a larger ship descending. Darker, heavier, its engines roaring like thunder. Lyra's eyes widened in terror. "That not hunters," she said. "That council ship." Ethan looked at her, his pulse quickening. "Council?" She nodded. "The ones who decide, who live, who die." The ship's shadow covered the valley, swallowing everything in darkness. Ethan stood, pulling Lyra close, his voice steady but fierce. "Then they'll have to face me too." As the ship lowered, a beam of light stretched from the clouds to the ground, and through that beam, silhouettes began to emerge, tall figures in silver armor. Their eyes glowing white. The chase was over, now it was war. The hidden memory. The valley glowed under the light of the descending ship, the air trembling with energy that made the trees bend and the earth hum. Ethan held Lyra tightly, shielding her from the roaring wind as dust and leaves spiraled around them. He could barely see through the light, but he felt the vibration deep in his chest, like the sky itself was growling. Lyra's pendant, cracked and dim before, suddenly flickered again. As if reacting to the ship above, she looked up, her voice small but urgent. "Ethan, they not just come for me. They come for you too," he frowned. "For me? Why?" Her glowing eyes met his. "Because you forget who you are." Before he could ask, the beam from the ship widened, and figures stepped out, 5 of them this time, taller, heavier, cloaked in silver armor that shimmered like liquid light. Their leader stood in front, his face hidden behind a mask that reflected everything around him. When he spoke, his voice carried a strange calm. "Human protector. Return the child. The prophecy ends tonight." Ethan's body tensed. "I don't care about your prophecy. She's staying with me." The leader tilted his head, almost amused. "And yet you speak as one who carries the bond. Curious. Perhaps you've forgotten the truth." Lyra's pendant pulsed brighter, reacting to his words. Suddenly the light around them twisted, shadows moving like water, and Ethan felt a sharp pain in his head. He dropped to one knee, clutching his skull as visions exploded behind his eyes. He saw stars, thousands of them, rushing past him as if he were falling through space. He saw a battlefield on another world, alien skies burning red, creatures of light and shadow fighting under twin suns. In the middle of the chaos stood a man himself, but not quite him. Wearing strange armor and holding Lyra's mother's hand, her voice echoed in his mind, calm and full of sorrow. "If I fall, protect her. Promise me, Ethan." Then everything went white. He gasped and fell backward, the memory vanishing as fast as it came. Lyra's small hands touched his face. "You see now," she whispered. "You remember?" Ethan stared at her, breathless. "That was me." "I was there." Lyra nodded slowly. "You fight with Mother. Long ago, you die saving her. Reborn here, human now." He shook his head in disbelief. "That's impossible." But deep inside, he knew the feeling was real. It wasn't a dream, it was something his soul remembered. The masked leader stepped closer, his voice heavy with authority. "The Protector has awakened, but it changes nothing. The code must be erased." Lyra stood in front of Ethan, trembling but defiant. "No, my mother's code brings peace, not war." "Peace?" The leader said coldly. "Peace is chaos. Order must be preserved." He raised his hand, and a beam of energy shot toward them. Ethan reacted instinctively, throwing himself in front of Lyra, but instead of pain, the beam shattered against an invisible barrier that flared around him, blue and golden light swirling like wings. The leader staggered back, surprised. "The bond has fully awakened," he muttered. "That's not possible." He shouldn't have remembered yet. Ethan stood slowly, feeling the same strange strength rush through him as before. He looked at his hands. The light was coming from within. From the connection he shared with Lyra, he turned toward her. "Whatever happens, you stay behind me." Lyra shook her head, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "We fight together." The ground cracked under the pressure as the other armored figures moved forward. Ethan raised his arm, and a pulse of energy shot out from his body, throwing them back with invisible force. He didn't understand how he did it. He just felt it. Like remembering how to breathe, the leader steadied himself, fury flashing in his glowing mask. "You cannot fight destiny." Ethan's voice rose over the wind. "Maybe not, but I can change it." Lightning flashed across the valley as both sides faced each other again. Lyra's pendant blazed with new light, merging its glow with Ethan's, their connection now one heartbeat. "One energy," the leader shouted. "Activate the purge!" And the ship above began to hum louder, its engines glowing red. Ethan turned to Lyra. "What happens if that fires?" Lyra's voice broke. "Everything dies, Earth too." Ethan stared at her for a long second, then clenched his fists. "Then it ends now," he said quietly, determination burning in his eyes. He stepped forward into the storm of light, his body glowing brighter than the ship above. For the first time, he wasn't running, he was remembering who he was. The choice Ethan's heart pounded like thunder as they ran along the riverbank, the water reflecting streaks of pale blue light from the sky above. Lyra clung to his arm, her steps slowing as exhaustion caught up to her. "Ethan," she whispered, "they close." He turned his head. Behind them, the forest shimmered with faint silver flashes, moving like shadows through the fog. They were being tracked, and he knew they couldn't keep running forever. He spotted a narrow cave hidden behind thick vines and pulled her inside. The air was damp and cold, but it was shelter. Lyra collapsed near the wall, breathing hard, her pendant still glowing softly against her chest. Ethan knelt beside her. "You have to tell me what they want from you," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra looked at him with those bright eyes that seemed far too ancient for a child's face. "They want me dead." "'Cause I hold the key," she whispered. "The key to what?" Ethan asked. "To peace." Between our worlds, before he could ask more, a distant hum rolled through the air, deep and rhythmic. Ethan peeked through the vines and saw them. Two silhouettes standing at the edge of the forest, their glowing eyes scanning the ground like predators. He turned back quickly, whispering, "They're here." Lyra gripped his hand tightly. "No run this time," she said. "They follow always." "Must choose now," Ethan frowned. "Choose what?" Lyra stood shakily, her pendant pulsing faster. She pointed to him. "You. Protector. Only you can save." Ethan shook his head. "Save you? I don't even understand what's happening." But Lyra didn't answer. She raised her hand, and a soft blue light spread across the cave walls. Symbols appeared in the air, floating like holograms, forming circles of energy around them. Ethan's breath caught. He could feel something tugging inside him, like his heartbeat was syncing with hers. Suddenly, the cave entrance exploded open, dust and rock flying everywhere. The two alien women stepped inside, their armor glowing, faces calm but merciless. The golden-eyed one spoke first, her voice echoing, "Step aside, human. She does not belong to your kind." Ethan stood protectively in front of Lyra, gripping a piece of metal pipe he had picked up earlier. "You'll have to go through me," he said. Though fear trembled in his voice, the dark-eyed woman tilted her head, almost amused. "You would die for her." Lyra stepped forward, her small hand glowing as she touched Ethan's arm. The blue light spread from her to him, wrapping them both in a faint shield of energy. The alien women froze, their expressions shifting from arrogance to shock. "The bond is real," one of them whispered. "He carries the human frequency." Ethan didn't know what that meant, but he felt the energy around him growing stronger. The air crackled like lightning trapped in glass. The golden-eyed woman raised her weapon. Aiming it at Lyra, Ethan moved without thinking. Stepping between them, a beam of light shot out, but instead of hitting him, it curved around, deflecting into the cave wall. Lyra's pendant flared, turning the air around them bright white. The aliens staggered back, shielding their faces. "Impossible," one hissed. "No human should survive that." Ethan felt dizzy, his vision flickering with flashes of stars and strange symbols. He heard Lyra's voice inside his head, clear and calm. "You choose now, Ethan," she said. "Hide or fight." He looked at her, at the faint tears in her eyes. Something deep inside him, the part that refused to watch the innocent suffer, made the decision for him. He took a deep breath and whispered, "We fight." Lyra nodded once, her pendant splitting into fragments that floated around them like shards of light. The ground trembled as the cave walls began to glow with ancient energy. The two alien women stepped back, uncertain now, their calm replaced by fear. Ethan looked at them with new strength in his eyes. He didn't understand what he had become, but he knew one thing. He would not let them take her. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and a bright beam of light cut through the clouds. Somewhere far above, a larger ship began to descend. Lyra turned toward him, whispering, "They call reinforcements." Ethan nodded, gripping her hand tightly. "Then we make our stand," he said, his voice steady now for the first time. The hunted became the hunters, the truth about Lyra. The ground trembled beneath their feet, dust raining down from the cave ceiling as the hum of the alien ship grew louder. Ethan tightened his grip on Lyra's hand, his pulse matching the strange rhythm of her glowing pendant. She looked up at him, her silver hair shimmering in the dim light. "They come for me," she whispered. "But not only me." Before he could ask what she meant, the entire cave lit up with a brilliant flash. The air turned electric, and the two alien women appeared again, this time surrounded by a blinding halo of light. Ethan stepped back, shielding his eyes. They didn't attack immediately, just watched him and Lyra with an expression somewhere between curiosity and disbelief. The one with golden eyes spoke first, her tone sharp but calm. "Human, do you even know what she is?" Ethan glared at her. "A child who needs help, that's all I need to know." The dark-eyed woman shook her head slowly. "She's not a child. She's an heir." Ethan frowned. "An heir? To what?" Lyra's expression changed, her lips pressed tight, her glowing eyes turning darker. "She right," Lyra said softly. "I am daughter of Elindra." Ethan looked at her in confusion. "You mean that queen from the vision?" Lyra nodded. "My mother, leader of Peace Worlds. She died to stop war." She paused, her small hands trembling. "Those who follow her wish peace. But others," she pointed at the alien women, "want power." The golden-eyed woman stepped forward, her voice colder now. "The queen's legacy was dangerous. Her child carries the code that could unite the factions or destroy them." Ethan's heart raced. "You mean this is about control?" "Control," the woman echoed, "and survival. She was never meant to reach Earth. Her coming here breaks the balance." Ethan stood in disbelief. "She's just a kid." The dark-eyed one smirked faintly. "A kid who can rewrite worlds." Lyra stepped between them, her pendant glowing brighter with every word. "You twist truth," she said, her small voice echoing like a storm. "Mother made code to stop war, not win it. You kill her for that?" The golden-eyed woman's face softened for a moment. "You were not meant to remember that." Lyra's eyes glistened. But I do. Ethan felt his heart clench. This tiny being had lost everything and still carried hope. He turned to the alien women, anger in his voice. If your kind destroyed her mother, why should I believe anything you say? The one with violet eyes glared at him. Because your world will suffer if she stays. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then they'll have to go through me. Suddenly, a thunderous noise shook the cave and cracks formed along the ceiling. Outside, the alien ship descended lower, its shadow swallowing the forest in silver light. The two women stepped back, touching their wrist devices. Communicating silently, Lyra grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward the deeper tunnel. Come now. They ran deeper into the cave as energy beams struck the ground outside. Shaking the walls in the darkness, Ethan stumbled. Catching himself on the rocks, Lyra stopped and turned, her pendant glowing again. But this time it projected images in the air. He saw the same queen from before holding Lyra close, whispering words in a glowing language. The vision shifted, to the queen sending Lyra away in a pod, light bursting behind her as explosions tore through their world. Lyra's voice trembled. She sent me to you? Ethan blinked. To me? Why? Lyra looked up, her expression full of calm certainty. Because you are protector? From old prophecy, Ethan shook his head. I'm no protector. Lyra. I'm just a man who found someone lost. But she smiled faintly, touching his chest again. No, you found me because you already protect. Before Ethan could respond, a beam of blue light broke through the cave wall, nearly blinding them. The alien women appeared again, surrounded by swirling energy. The golden-eyed one raised her hand. Enough hiding. The council has chosen. The child must return. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing white now. No, she said. Her voice no longer that of a frightened child. It was powerful, commanding, ancient. This time, I choose. The air vibrated with her words. The pendant lifted into the air. Spinning faster and faster, Ethan reached for her. Lyra, what are you doing? She turned to him with tears in her glowing eyes. Ending chase, she whispered, then, with a blinding flash, a shockwave of light burst outward, throwing everyone to the ground. When Ethan opened his eyes, the two alien women were gone, vanished into thin air. The cave was silent again, except for Lyra's faint breathing. She collapsed into his arms, whispering, Now. They know truth. Ethan looked around. Dazed and breathless, somewhere above them, the ship was retreating into the clouds, and for the first time, he realized Lyra wasn't just someone to protect. She was someone who might save them all. The language of stars. The sun rose weakly over the mountains, painting the forest in pale light. Ethan hadn't slept, his mind still full of the strange voice that echoed through his home last night. Lyra was sitting by the window, her tiny fingers tracing foggy lines on the glass. She looked peaceful now, but her glowing blue eyes still carried a deep sadness. Every time she looked at the sky, Ethan could see fear hiding behind her calm face. He placed a cup of warm milk in front of her, hoping it might help. She sniffed it curiously, then took a slow sip, her expression softening for a moment. You, safe now, she said, her English broken but understandable. Ethan smiled a little. No, kid, you're the one who needs to be safe. Lyra tilted her head, as if trying to understand him, then pointed toward the sky. Not safe. Here, she whispered before Ethan could respond. The radio on the shelf buzzed again, but this time instead of static, it spoke. A soft, rhythmic series of tones rising and falling like music. Lyra's eyes widened and she rushed toward it. Pressing her small hand over the speaker, the tones changed instantly. Matching her heartbeat, she closed her eyes, her pendant glowing in sync with the sounds. Ethan watched in silence, every hair on his arm standing on end. After a minute, the radio went silent again. Lyra opened her eyes, tears shining like tiny stars on her cheeks. Ethan knelt down beside her. What was that? Who was that? She struggled to form words. It is language. From my people, she said slowly. Then she pointed to her pendant. This, translator. Broken before, now working. Ethan frowned. So you can talk now? She nodded weakly. Some words. Yes. Her voice was soft, musical, almost too gentle for this world. Ethan sat on the floor beside her, his mind racing. He asked carefully, Why were they chasing you, Lyra? The ones who came last night? Lyra's expression darkened, her hands tightening around the pendant. Bad, she whispered. They kill many. I run. Her eyes met his, full of pain beyond her years. They want me dead, because I know truth. Ethan swallowed hard, trying to process what he was hearing. What truth? He asked. She touched the glowing crystal again, and suddenly the room filled with a soft blue mist. Images began to form in the air, floating lights, cities made of silver, and strange ships flying between glowing rings. Ethan gasped, staring as if watching a dream come to life. This, my world, Lyra said softly. Beautiful once, now war. The images changed, cities burning, soldiers in black armor, and creatures with glowing red eyes marching through fire. At the center of it all, a tall woman with silver hair raised a sword made of light. That. My mother, Lyra whispered, her voice breaking. Queen of Elindra. Ethan's heart sank. You're a princess. She looked down. No more. She gone. The mist faded, leaving only silence. Ethan could feel his heartbeat thudding in his chest. If her story was true, then the two alien women who came last night weren't saviors. They were hunters. He stood up, pacing. They'll come back, won't they? Lyra nodded slowly. Yes. Soon, Ethan rubbed his forehead, thinking fast. He didn't know how to fight creatures from another world, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to hand her over. Okay, he said, taking a deep breath. We'll figure this out together. Lyra looked up at him. Hope flickering in her glowing eyes. For the first time, she whispered, You good human. Then suddenly, the house lights flickered again. The radio turned itself back on, but this time instead of tones, a clear voice spoke. Elindra signal traced, it said, cold and mechanical. Location confirmed. Ethan froze. Lyra's pendant began to glow brighter. Pulsing faster, she looked terrified. They find us, she said outside. The forest filled with a low humming sound, and just before the window shattered under a burst of blue light, Ethan grabbed her hand. Run, he whispered. And together they fled into the dawn, unaware that the real hunt had just begun. The visitors, the morning sky was dark again, clouds swirling as if hiding something above. Ethan and Lyra ran until their lungs burned, finally reaching the back of an abandoned barn far from town. Ethan pushed open the old wooden door, the hinges screeching softly. Inside it smelled of dust and hay, a forgotten place where no one had walked in years. They hid behind a stack of barrels, both breathing hard. Lyra's pendant still glowed faintly, the light beating like a heart. Are we safe here? Ethan whispered, looking through a gap in the wall. Lyra shook her head. They track me. Always, she said weakly. Her small face was pale, her silver hair now dim and tangled. Ethan tried to comfort her. We'll keep moving then. We'll find a way to stop them. She looked at him, her eyes full of something between trust and sorrow. They not stop, she whispered. They coming. And she was right, just as Ethan turned. A soft knock echoed from the barn door. It wasn't loud, just gentle, polite, almost human, but it sent a shiver down his spine. He raised a finger to his lips, signaling Lyra to stay silent. The knock came again, 3 slow taps, then silence. Who's there? Ethan called out carefully, trying to sound calm. A smooth, melodic voice replied, We mean no harm, human. We seek the child. Ethan's heart froze. He moved closer to the door but didn't open it. Outside, through the cracks, he saw 2 tall figures standing in the mist. They looked like women, beautiful, graceful, but not human. Their skin shimmered faintly under the sunlight, and their armor reflected strange colors. Each of them carried a staff that hummed softly with light. One had golden eyes, calm but sharp. The other had dark violet ones that glowed faintly. Ethan whispered, They found us. Lyra gripped his arm, shaking her head desperately. Not guards, she said in a frightened whisper. They kill. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped toward the door anyway. He opened it just enough to speak. She's not here, he said firmly. You've got the wrong place. The one with golden eyes tilted her head, smiling faintly. Human, she said softly. Your words are kind, but your energy betrays you. Her eyes glowed brighter, scanning through the walls as if she could see straight into the barn. The other woman stepped forward, raising her hand. From her palm came a small orb of light that floated in the air. It pulsed once and pointed directly at the barrels where Lyra was hiding. Found her, the dark-eyed one said coldly. Lyra screamed, and the orb exploded into sparks. Lighting up the whole barn, Ethan didn't think. He grabbed Lyra and ran toward the back door. A blast of blue light hit the wall beside them, burning a hole through wood and hay. He stumbled out into the open, pulling Lyra by the hand. Behind them, the two women stepped out of the barn, walking slowly like hunters who knew their prey couldn't escape. "Stop!" The golden-eyed one shouted. "We will not harm the human if you surrender the girl." Ethan turned and yelled, "You're lying." He lifted a metal rod from the ground and pointed it at them. Though he knew it was useless, Lyra's pendant flashed, forming a small glowing barrier around them for just a moment. The air around them buzzed with energy. The two women stopped, surprised. "She's using her bond," one whispered, the other frowned. "Impossible. That connection only forms with chosen protectors." Ethan didn't understand any of it, but he saw their hesitation as his only chance. He pulled Lyra into the trees and disappeared into the forest shadows. Minutes later, when they finally stopped near a river, Lyra looked up at him, her voice trembling. "They know now," she said. "Know what?" Ethan asked, still panting. Lyra touched his chest lightly, her glowing fingers over his heart. "That you are the one," she whispered, her eyes full of tears and light. Ethan didn't know what she meant, but in that moment, the forest around them went silent again, and high above, through the clouds, something vast and silver began to move. The night he found her. The night was quiet, colder than usual, the kind of night when even the wind sounded tired. Ethan sat alone in his small cabin, watching the woods through the foggy window. He lived far from town where silence was louder than voices. That was when he saw it, a sudden flash across the sky, bright enough to turn the trees white for a second. It wasn't a shooting star, it was slower, heavier, and it crashed somewhere beyond the hill. His first thought was a plane, maybe a drone, but then the ground shook softly. He grabbed his flashlight and coat, stepped outside, and followed the faint trail of smoke rising in the dark. The smell was strange, not like fire or metal, but something sharp and sweet. When he reached the clearing, he saw broken branches and a small glowing shape half buried in the mud. He froze. It wasn't metal, it was a pod, smooth like glass, humming softly, and inside it, someone was moving. He wiped the dirt off the clear surface and saw a girl, no older than 10, her skin pale blue, her hair silver, her eyes half open but glowing faintly. She looked hurt, weak and frightened. Ethan hesitated, his hands shaking. He didn't believe in aliens. But she was right there, breathing, crying softly. He touched the side of the pod. It was warm, almost alive. Then it opened on its own with a hiss. The girl fell forward into his arms, shivering like a lost child. Hey, it's okay," Ethan whispered. Though his heart was racing, she said something, but the words were strange, soft tones that didn't sound human. He looked around, afraid someone might be watching. But the woods were empty, so he carried her home, every step heavy with questions he couldn't answer. Back at his cabin, he laid her on the couch near the fire. Her skin shimmered under the light, tiny specks of silver moving like dust. When he tried to check her pulse, a faint spark jumped to his fingers. He pulled back in shock. She wasn't human, that much was clear, but she was alive, scared and freezing. He wrapped her in a blanket for a while. She just stared at the fire with those glowing eyes. Then she whispered something again, softer this time. Her hand reached toward his chest, as if searching for warmth, and suddenly, the lights in his cabin flickered. The radio on the shelf turned on by itself, whispering static mixed with strange echoes. Ethan stood still, not breathing. The girl looked terrified too, clutching his sleeve like she wanted protection. Outside, a deep hum rolled through the air, low, powerful, like something passing overhead. He stepped to the window and saw lights moving behind the clouds. Too large to be planes, they hovered for a few seconds, then disappeared toward the mountains. He turned back, and the girl was looking right at him. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Hide." "They are coming." The radio went silent. The fire cracked louder, and Ethan realized whatever he had brought home wasn't just lost. It was being hunted. The strange signals. Ethan didn't sleep that night. The air inside his cabin felt too heavy, like the walls were holding their breath. The little alien girl, Lyra, as he later learned, was still lying on the couch, wrapped in his old blanket, her tiny hands clutching the edge like it was the only safe thing in the universe. Outside, the storm that never was had left behind a strange silence. No crickets, no wind, not even the soft creak of trees. It was as if the forest itself was afraid to make a sound. Ethan sat beside the fire, staring at the glowing embers and wondering if he should call someone. Maybe the authorities, the army, or even NASA. But every time he looked at her, Those soft silver strands of hair, those glowing blue eyes and the bruises on her skin. His heart told him not to. She wasn't a monster. She was a scared child and she trusted him, even though she didn't know his world. Suddenly the radio crackled to life on its own. It hissed and buzzed. And then a voice spoke. No, not a voice. More like a deep vibration that felt inside the bones. The words were not English, but they carried a rhythm, like a coded message. The lights above flickered in perfect timing with the sounds. Ethan turned it off, but the static didn't stop. It came from everywhere. From the walls, from the air, even from the fire. Lyra sat up sharply, her eyes wide, her small body shaking. She looked around and said a single word, one that Ethan couldn't understand but felt full of fear. Then she covered her ears and screamed. A sound that didn't just come from her mouth. It echoed inside his head. Ethan stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the table, the sound piercing through his skull, and just as suddenly, everything stopped. Silence returned, heavy and absolute. Lyra dropped her hands and began to cry softly, her tears glowing faintly as they hit the blanket. Ethan knelt beside her, his hands trembling. It's okay, you're safe now," he whispered. But deep inside, he knew it wasn't true. He noticed then that her pendant, a small, round crystal hanging around her neck, was pulsing gently with blue light. It flashed 3 times, paused, then flashed again. Ethan realized it was a pattern, a signal. "Is that calling someone?" he asked quietly. Lyra looked at him, then down at the pendant, her lips trembling as she said the first word he understood. "Danger." He froze. She spoke again, slowly, struggling with English. "They find me. Soon." Ethan's heart dropped. "Who? Who's coming?" But she didn't answer. She just looked toward the window, where the forest was bathed in a soft silver light. Outside, the trees began to move, not from wind, but from something passing through them. Ethan switched off the lamp and peeked out, his breath fogging the glass. There, in the distance, he saw faint blue beams scanning the ground like spotlights. They weren't from any helicopter. They moved too smoothly. Too silently, he felt his pulse race. He turned to Lyra. "We need to hide," he whispered. She nodded weakly, clutching her pendant, and followed him to the small trapdoor that led to the cellar. They climbed down quietly, closing the door above them, leaving the cabin in complete darkness down below. The air smelled of earth and old wood. Ethan held her close, listening to the soft hum growing louder above them. Footsteps, heavy, metallic, echoed faintly through the floorboards. Someone or something was inside his house. The footsteps paused near the fireplace. Ethan held his breath, his hand on Lyra's shoulder. Then came a low, mechanical voice, distorted and calm. "Target life sign detected. Search incomplete." Lyra pressed her face into Ethan's chest, whispering something he couldn't understand. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the sound faded. The footsteps stopped and the hum moved away. Into the distance, minutes passed, but neither of them moved. When Ethan finally climbed back up and peeked through the window, the sky was empty again, but the forest outside was glowing faintly. Like a warning, he didn't know what they were, or what they wanted. But one thing was clear. Whatever found her in those woods would come back. And next time, they wouldn't just be looking, they'd be hunting.